everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic, the place that encourages you to go out, get dressed up, and watch a movie. So first, I just wanted to let you guys know that I haven't really been making these videos because I've been dealing with some family health issues for the past couple of months, and so I really just haven't had the time to make anything. Although I have seen some films, I didn't have the time to actually sit down and do the reviews, and I haven't had the time to go on YouTube and read the comments. So I just wanted to let you know and apologize for that. It looks like that the situation might be changing soon, so I'd be able to get on a more regular schedule, but for now I think it's still going to be just a little bit spotty, so I wanted to apologize for that. So today I am reviewing The Post, starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, and it's directed by Steven Spielberg. And this was a perfectly good movie. By no means is this a great movie, but I enjoyed it. I learned a few things surrounding the Pentagon Papers, and it was definitely enjoyable to watch, but it also wasn't at that level of Best Picture by far. I would definitely put this as one of the weaker Best Picture contenders. So the film is definitely about free press, and it starts off with the New York Times breaking a story, getting classified documents that are basically saying that the past 4 U.S. presidents of both political parties, they knew that going into the Vietnam War it was completely unwinnable, but yet they went into it anyway. And so these documents have leaked, and Nixon is the president at the time, and then the New York Times basically gets shut down with this story. They can't do anything with it, and the journalists potentially may be going to jail because they're stating that you're putting U.S. lives in jeopardy. So the Washington Post comes along, and at this point it's a really small local paper. It's not what it is today, and this is really the story that made them into the large newspaper that they are right now. So it was interesting. I didn't understand that. I didn't realize that. I knew the Pentagon Papers, but I didn't really understand the impact on the free press, which is what made this story quite interesting, because these people really put themselves in a difficult situation where, not only would they not be able to publish the story, but they could potentially go to jail for publishing the story. So it's something I didn't know about, and it was certainly enjoyable. However, the film certainly falls into a ton of cliches. It's very, that the shots aren't necessarily memorable, and it's just, kind of a basic, well-made movie with a good story, but there was nothing about it that took it over the top for me. And part of that has to do with the characters. They weren't incredibly well developed, and they weren't that diverse, or well written. I think it was fine, but it was nothing that really took it over the top. So Tom Hanks plays Ben Bradley, the current editor of the Washington Post, and then Meryl Streep plays Kay Graham, the first female publisher of any newspaper. So Bradley is presented as a good guy who wants to do his job no matter what the consequences are. So when the Washington Post is presented with the same source that went to the New York Times, Tom Hanks' character really sees this as an opportunity to take the Washington Post and elevate it. They were always doing these fluff pieces, and they were always chasing stories. They're a step behind all of the other newspapers. So this was something that really could have broken them apart, and truly does so. But Tom Hanks' character, while he is a completely commendable guy, he's such a good guy, it feels like he is playing another version of Tom Hanks. There wasn't necessarily a lot of depth to the character. You don't see him go through any kind of conflict. He's just very certain, that he needs to get this story. And at times, to me, it sort of felt like Perry White, the newspaper editor from Superman. It was that very over-the-top accent, almost like a bit of a caricature of what you would expect a newspaper editor to be. And so in that respect, I found him to be a bit of a flat character. Now, Meryl Streep character, Kay Graham, I found to be much more interesting because she does have some kind of an arc, and she starts off in a very timid place, and I was impressed with Meryl Streep's performance in the film. So she's the publisher of the newspaper because her husband has died, and now she basically has to take over. So most of the other men do not treat her as the head of the paper, and they feel like she's more suited to throwing parties and being the face of the newspaper without making any important decisions. And what's interesting is that she really does remain timid for most of the film, and I appreciated that kind of realism in the film because she wasn't this character who just came out guns blazing, ready to take over the male-dominated world, because that's not realistic. I mean, she lived her entire life in the shadow of her husband, and he was the one that made all the decisions in the newspaper, and you're not just going to flip a switch and feel like you have the power and authority to make those decisions. So in that respect, I really appreciated the realism in the film, and I was impressed with Streep's performance because I thought it was much more subtle than the types of performances she normally gives. She's normally out there, I think, a little bit more, and more of a version of Meryl Streep, and they're very extroverted characters. So it has been a while since I've seen her play a truly introverted, timid character, and I appreciated that. And I will not go so far to say that she gives one of the best performances that I've seen all year, because this wasn't one of my favorite performances, but it really did stand out to me as one of the best parts of the film. And so I would recommend watching this movie for the story and also for seeing Meryl Streep's performance. But really, other than those two things, it's a good movie that is not especially a standout. I saw this film a couple of weeks ago, and I have not thought about it since, whereas a lot of the other films that are nominated, I can't stop thinking about. So this is definitely one that, once I saw it, okay, I saw it, it was good, and now it's done. And, this film was made in under a year, and I believe it would have done the film some good to have some extra time to tweak and edit. It's a story that is just incredibly plot driven, but the dialogue is not clever, and the action is rather predictable. So it's not like anything like Aaron Sorkin type dialogue. There were no shots in the film that were especially memorable, and the story is very straightforward, and I just found that it didn't leave room for a conversation afterwards. The only thing I was thinking was, wow, that was a horrible time in American history, and things don't really change. And that was about it. It didn't get me asking any further questions. It was just a timely piece that is reflective of the culture that we're in right now, but it didn't add anything further to the conversation, which is really what I would be expecting from a film like that. So, I mean, other than watching, a story that is interesting and Meryl Streep's performance, there's not that much more going on. And now for the grades. In terms of film and artistry, I would give The Post a B. There are definitely some flaws and cliches in the writing. The acting is all good, although no real standouts except for Meryl Streep's character. But there was nothing that took this film over the top. I felt like if there were a different director like David Fincher, then there could be this sort of movement and meditation and reflection on what it is that you're seeing. And it's not that Steven Spielberg does a bad job at all. He doesn't. It's just, a little bit predictable feeling. And in terms of watchability, I would give The Post a B+. I did enjoy watching it as I was watching it, and I liked it a lot more than I expected. It's the type of movie that I would just, immediately say, this was made for Oscar season. This is an Oscar bait movie, and it is. But it is more enjoyable than I expected it to be, although it does feel like very surface level journalism. So I would much rather watch a film like Spotlight that felt truly authentic to what it's like to be a journalist, rather than this, which glossed over a lot of the actual work that the journalists were doing, and it keeps a very superficial story. So thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to know what you thought about the film. Have you seen it? Do you think it deserves to be nominated for Best Picture, and I will do my best to try to answer back, although like I said before, I'm not, you know, entirely sure of what my schedule is going to be. So I appreciate it so much that you guys take the time to watch this. If you liked it, please give a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. And remember, it is always in fashion to go out, get dressed up, and make it a cinema chic night. Bye everyone.